All right, good morning, afternoon, evening. Quick stream joined by Jason. Thanks, Jason. We're just kicking off the hackathon this morning for me, this afternoon, this evening, potentially for you. You should be able to find all the information on the main GitLab hackathon webpage. And there's an awesome tutorial that we've been refining on how to get your development environment set up, making contributions with the Web IDE or with Gitpod or GDK. So yeah, we've got some great opportunities to contribute to some security issues. And rather than me get it all wrong, I'm going to pass straight over to Jason.
Sure. Thank you, Lee. Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a great day. As Lee just mentioned, it was a great opportunity to be part of the hackathon, and I just figured we might be able to learn a couple of things, teach a couple of things, and share with the community a couple of things we've been doing at GitLab. Among those are efforts in the SAST front. So the idea is that if you want to contribute to GitLab, but you are not a Ruby person or like a Golang person, and you would rather get smaller packages of doable, addressable work, which is a bit self-contained and can be tackled, decoupled a bit from the whole of GitLab code base, and then incorporated into it. I think this is a perfect opportunity. That's why I originally reached out to Lee and suggested we open an opportunity for folks to contribute to the GitLab SAST rules effort.
And
That's why
these are
this is very
nice, repeatable. There's a formula, so to speak, right? So, and forgive me if you've probably already got the answer to this later on, but there's a decent number of these, so hopefully enough for anyone to pick up.
Yeah, there's a big number of them. I'm focused at the moment mostly on Python and also on helping improve a bit the workflow of how we at GitLab do this. Also improving the documentation that contributors and customers can use to understand SAST, understand the rules, contribute to them, fine-tune them, play with them. So this very brief intro, I think it's 6-7 slides, is aimed at giving you all a very, very quick intro to what is GitLab SAST if it's the first time you're hearing about it, and then how you can contribute and how we can support you in getting acquainted with these features and also contributing to them. So this documentation is very much in progress. Lee is going to share the link later, so you can have a look at the slides and then leave comments, and I can, if there are questions or comments, complete them in the course of the week and add my remarks to them. So feel free to post any questions. So very, very basically, when you are using GitLab, this is sort of like one of the ways you can see your personal workflow of creating code, testing it, running pipelines, analyzing it, securing it, and deploying it. Usually it starts with an issue, then you create a merge request where you address that requirement. You continue to work on that merge request until you're satisfied. Continuously, the pipeline is running, the pipeline for that project. And at some point in the pipeline, there are some jobs which perform security scans. That's where we're wanting to improve the GitLab features when it comes to static analysis. Now, static analysis is the area of security analysis that deals with the application security and what can be said about a program without running it. Just by looking at the code, you have a look at the code and you try to identify patterns in that code that are not secure in order to nudge the developer or nudge whoever is involved in this merge request to improve their code and make it more secure. So at GitLab, we're working on improving continuously our SAST offering and our SAST features, including our rule set, right? So I've set up a small hands-on demo for you all so you can test and play around with this. Here's the link in the slides. Lee also has the link to the demo, but I'm gonna give you a very brief overview of what you're gonna find in there and how these rules that help us perform static analysis on code in pipelines work and how they look like and how you can contribute some of them. So when you clone the demo, what you're gonna have is basically a small file called rule.yaml, and you're gonna have a small project which is called target, and that project is vulnerable. It's a small Django application which is vulnerable to SQL injection and has many different bugs on purpose. So the idea is that, as you can see on the right, we're using here SendGrep. GitLab supports many different analyzers. We are in the process of improving continuously our support of analyzers of rules, or making the infrastructure underlying SAST better. SendGrep is one of those analyzers. SendGrep is a tool, another tool, an external tool, not associated with GitLab, but they have an open source project, and we also support their analyzer. GitLab has a SendGrep analyzer, which uses the SendGrep engine, the open source SendGrep engine, to perform static analysis on code. So what you're seeing here is I cloned the demo. And on my terminal to the right, I run the rule in the repo against the target. And it's already telling me that it found 25 code findings, so security vulnerabilities. Now, I will, as a developer, have to determine whether those vulnerabilities are true or not. Probably there are some false positives in there, probably not. But that is already pretty powerful. Now, imagine you have 2, 3, 4 different different scanners, of which SendGrep is just one, and you want to embed those into your software development lifecycle. So that's where GitLab comes into play. GitLab helps you or us all create better code by continuously scanning it while we are developing it. And in this case, for the hackathon, I figured we could create the space for everyone who wants to contribute new GitLab SAST rules for the SendGrep open source engine, with which GitLab interfaces to make it possible for you all. So this is what you're going to find when you clone the demo. And the way you can contribute is basically, I have an epic for Python priority 1 rules. So you can see all the issues and you will identify the priority 1 rules with a red label, which you're not going to miss. Then you pick an issue, you comment in the issue, hey, I would like to tackle this. You start working on it. This is what it looks like, right? That epic. We have very many Python, Django, Flask, etc. Rules that we want to embed into the product. And you open that issue, you start working on it. This is what they all look like, right? Why are we doing this work? What is this rule about? How you can go step by step, like debugging your rule and understanding what it does and what it should do. After you have sort of understood what you need to do, then you need to write vulnerable code. You need to write wrong code that has this particular bug. Many different types of places, many different types of ways of sneaking this bug into your very simple application, because this is what we call vulnerable proof of concept, or short MRE, minimal runnable example. And here's where we have some of those minimal runnable examples, these proof of concepts that are vulnerable and help us test our rules in this repo, in the SAST rules apps Python web repo. And after you have created your vulnerable application and you are somewhat sure that your rule catches most of the instances of that bug happening, then you can create and write your GitLab SAST rule and merge it to the security product SAST rules. That's where I can help you select an issue that is suitable, that is interesting to you, where you're going to learn something. Perhaps you wanted to learn about a particular type of security vulnerability. SQL injections. What are SQL injections? How do they look in code? How do you avoid them, abuse them? you want to learn about that. So you pick an issue which is related to SQL injections in Python and has a priority to 1 label. Then you start writing your small application, which doesn't need to be a full-fledged Python application. It's just a proof of concept for you to showcase that bug. And then you write your rule. And then we start tweaking those side by side. And then when it's ready, we merge both the vulnerable code, the vulnerable application to the test repository, and the rule to the GitLab SAST rule. And that's basically it. So that's why this is pretty cool, because it's self-contained, but it's still complex. And once you clone the repo, you're going to realize that there are a lot of moving parts, and that I hope with the references and also with the way the repo is structured, the demo is structured, to have made it a bit easier for everyone who wants to contribute to security-related features in GitLab, a bit easier. Very quick through the references, just the GitLab documentation about static application security, security testing, the link to the epic with the rules, an example Python Django SAST rule for an SQL injection vulnerability, an example vulnerable application which runs in a very small, in a Docker container, very simple Dockerized Django application, which you can just clone and run with Docker. So you can get acquainted with how I personally write the rules. And then some very important links to the documentation of the SemGrep open source engine and their syntax for their rules. Because if we're going to write rules for GitLab's SemGrep analyzer, which uses the SemGrep open source engine, then we must abide by the syntax of SemGrep and the rules. So yeah, that's very, very, very quick what we're dealing with. And just so I can show you what we are, like what we just very briefly saw. What is it going to look like when you are in your terminal or your editor? So this is my terminal, right? So I cloned the repo over here, and you see that if I go into the repo, there is a pipenv, a Python environment, to make it easier for you all to have what it's needed to run this project locally. So you just pipenv install, and then you pipenv shell, right? All dependencies are already there. So pipenv shell, and that's going to give you a shell like the one I have on my right. So here I'm inside the pipenv shell. And now you're going to see that there in target, there's a full-fledged small Django application, many different problems, and especially in the views, we have lots of SQLE test cases. Now let's go to the editor. I like Visual Studio Code, so you can see what we're dealing with. Same thing what we had locally in the terminal once we cloned the repo. Same thing we have here on Visual Studio Code. I cloned the repo. Here you see the target application, and you see the rule. So the idea is that this rule is going to help us catch all these instances where we have an SQL injection. Here you see a problem. They are all demarked using, in this case, SemGrep open source test annotations. So you know that whenever you see a rule ID, that is a code that is problematic and that it should be catched by this rule. Then here we have another SQL injection. Here we have another SQL injection. And the idea is that this tiny rule is going to analyze all this code and will catch all those bugs. And if we go to our terminal here, also within Visual Studio Code, and run it. So we tell SemGrep open source engine, please scan based on this rule over here, this target directory, and show me only the findings. It's going to take a while. Then here we have all our findings. It's showing us 20, how many? 31 different security vulnerabilities. Many different security issues, especially related to SQL usage. The reasons why raw SQL usage in Django applications is problematic, you can go and do a bit of reading. but the finding in the idea is that the message will explain to you. We have detected usage of Django, raw SQL, etc. Right? This is insecure for X, Y, Z reasons. And we have a way we write these messages, especially if you have a look at the issues linked to the Python epic, to the GitLab SAST Python community rules epic. We are working also with the SemGrep open source engine with the rules. So already these messages are not like freestyle, but you have some scaffold to go off and to work with if you want to contribute the rule in whatever Python type of project which we have linked in that epic. Yeah, and that is very broadly speaking what this is about. So if you want to contribute, do not hesitate to reach out to Lee. If there's something you didn't understand, if you need more docs, yeah, so this is something we care a lot about, and we're putting a lot of effort into the SAST, the GitLab SAST effort, the GitLab SAST capabilities. And this is very, very meaningful work you would be doing if you are interested in doing. There's also other languages. I'm currently mostly focusing on Python. Other team members are focusing on other languages, but since I'm the one who suggested Lee sort of to open the space for you all to contribute, then I don't want to burden the teammates with other languages who work on other languages, but this is Python, the area I'm currently focusing on, so I can help you with the Python rules in case you want to get your feet wet in this area of the product. Oh yeah, one last thing, Lee, because you mentioned and we briefly talked about it. This is a feature you can use on your free projects, right? Like you can enable SAST. You can scan your code based on SAST rules, and you're probably not going to have access to the ultimate security dashboard with all the findings and the information, etc. But you can download the result of the scans and the artifacts tab from within GitLab, and you can analyze that with other tools for your personal projects. This is regardless of the hackathon, just letting you all know that SAST is a feature that, although it's normally understood to be ultimate and premium only, it's actually free. But what belongs to other tiers is the more involved and more complex workflows and features of the product, which relate to SAST. But the basic scanning your code based on SAST rules belongs also in free, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Really appreciate you sparing all that information for us. So the one question I had just looking from your example there, I know you showed earlier on in the slide deck that we had a separate project for, I think, for the rules, and a separate project for like the MREs, the examples of vulnerable code. Here, the project you've got, from what I understand looking at it, you've actually got the MRE and the rule within a single project. Do you mind just kind of clarifying? I think you understand the question there. So.
Yeah, for sure. Lee, that's a great question. I put both in a single repository for the purpose of explanation, right? So everyone can clone this demo repo and have a rule that works on a vulnerable project and detect
Perfect.
stuff and understand what's going on. But we separated because we have hundreds of rules, right? And we not only have Python, we also have Golang, and we have JavaScript and Java and Kotlin and Ruby. And we're working on many different fronts to improve the coverage of GitLab SAST. So that's why we separate the rules from the vulnerable code. Also, the vulnerable code tends to be bulky, right? If you want a Django app, you need to ship certain things so it's reproducible and it can be built and run. So you don't want that in the product. So we don't put that in the SAST rules repository. because that would mean that all of that would be shipped with GitLab, and it would just make it unnecessarily bulky, shipping all the test code and all the vulnerable code to test the rules within it. So that is the
Right. So
reason.
all the rules are in a single project, and then we've got several repos with web apps that are vulnerable to depending on the language or something along those lines. Awesome.
I can very briefly show you the what you precisely mentioned. So let's go to Python. Oops, here. So this is what we were talking about. Thank you for making this question, Lee. That is super, super important. So if we go to the GitLab hackathon, right? So here's the repo. And as Lee mentioned, in the repo, you have both combined. You have the role and you have the target MRE, and both are in the same repo. You see that the pipelines run, and in the pipeline, you will see a SendGrep SAST scan, right? The SendGrep scan, the GitLab's SAST scan used the SendGrep open source analyzer, and it concluded, right? Now I can go to the artifacts to see what the scan produced. And we can see that there's a SAST report, right? The GitLab SAST report. I can then load that and open it. If we would download that and open it and go down that rabbit hole, you would just see a JSON file with different findings. At this line, we found an SQLE. At this line, we found XYZ. So this is the way you could test using GitLab.com or the GDK. But you can test it using GitLab.com that your test project is working. Also, you can just simply fork this repo and start working on your side of things. Now, the way this is the SAST rules repository in the GitLab overarching group organization, and you will see that is a very bulky project with lots of folders, with lots of languages, and every folder. If we go here to the Python, we have, for example, the rule that I use, the example that I used here. This is the vulnerable test code, and we also have the rule, right? So in this repo, we have the minimal piece of code you need to test this rule Django raw SQL used Py, and we have the rule only. All other things, the Docker manifest, or the documentation of the vulnerable app, or that is somewhere else, because we don't want to make this repository as bloated.
Right.
And if we go to the Python web apps, now you're going to see that in this repo, we have, if we go to Django, injection, raw SQL, now here we have everything. So when you submit your MR for the MRE, we test it here, we write it here, we merge the MRE to this repo, right? And once the MRE is working, once we've that the MRE is vulnerable, once we verify that the MRE shows the problem we want to catch with the issue and the rule, then we go to SAST rules and we create and merge a rule with the minimal piece of code that we prepared in the MRE to test it here as well. And that is what's considered a rule, usually. The MRE and the rule. And the MRE serves as a test case, complex test case that is realistic for the rule. And at that point, we close the issue. And
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you, Lee. Awesome. That was a super, super important question.
No. It's good that I'm as new to these SAST rules as anyone else watching. So yeah, that's perfect. Really appreciate you taking the time, Jason. And yeah, if anyone's got any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Have a great day.